Welcome to the full moon forecast with astrologers Justin Crocket Elzie and myself, Elizabeth Liz Muschett. Today's episode is the Leo full moon. The full moon occurs on January 25th at 5 degrees and 14 minutes of Leo at 9:54 a.m. Pacific time and 12:54 p.m. Eastern time. Yesterday was history in the making. We had a Sun Pluto conjunction, or Cazimi, and Cazimi means in the heart of the sun, in Capricorn at 29 degrees and 59 minutes. This begins a new Pluto Sun cycle. This won't happen again for about another 230 years in Capricorn. What do you think of that, Justin?
Dynamic. All right, this is our first full moon forecast show.
And the other thing that happened yesterday was the Sun and Pluto ingressed or moved into the sign of Aquarius on the same day. Pluto hasn't been in Aquarius for almost 230 years also. So
Yep.
there was a lot happening yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's been a busy January, I think, so far. So Justin, can I have you share about the Nakshatras? And I'll get to that slide.
Okay.
And here's the slide for Justin and myself's web pages if you'd like to get a hold of us. Justin's is justincrocketlz.com, and my website is alightpath.com.
All right.
And then here is a chart of the full moon for those of you that would like to see it. And this chart is cast for Seattle, Washington, and the moon and the sun are opposite each other.
Yeah. So can we go back to the prior slide there really quickly, Liz? Yeah. So we all know, just so everybody knows, it's a Leo full moon. It's a wolf moon in Native American spirituality. That's what they call this full moon of the year. And of course, as you pointed out, this is for all of our slides are showing Pacific time. So so one of the things is, Liz, that I always like to tell people, and if we go to the next slide, so the nakshatras are what we call lunar mansions, and the lunar mansion, of course, is the stars in the constellation that the moon is going through at that particular period of time, the stars behind the constellation there. And for this particular Leo new moon, if we look into the sidereal or Eastern astrology, Jyotish, some people call it Vedic, but it's really Jyotish astrology, the star associated with this moon, the nakshatra lunar mansion, is the Pushya, which relates to, it's called the star of nourishment, and the symbol is the cow's udder. So if we could think about the cow's udder, it nourishes, people feed off of that. I mean, not people, but, cows feed off of that. And so that's why it's called the star of nourishment. And it's in the fourth pada. So with each of the lunar mansions, there's 4 sections, or what they call padas. And this breaks it down. And so for this particular one, and this relates to, I think you'll see, Liz, as we get to this today, this will kind of have some relationship. It'll kind of start building on the theme along with the Sabian symbols of what the theme of this moon is. So we start with this. This kind of gives us an overall. And so there's something very important about this full moon in Leo, that it's about nurturing others without return or conditions. So it's unconditional nurturing and connecting emotionally with others deeply and celestial beings. The ruling planet is Saturn, and the ruling deity with this lunar mansion is Brihaspati, which was called the Lord of Sacred Speech, or the Lord of the Gods. It was really basically the teacher of the gods. And the basis above, so we always think of as above, so below. So the basis above is creatures to be healed, and the below is healing therapy. So there's something really important about this moon, this Leo moon, that of course in the Jyotish it's in Cancer, but it's same. But there's something here that relates to, as we get into this, and I'll bring this back up, how this aspect of caring and relationship and nurturing or birthing something that will play out with this moon. So this is a great way to start on the lunar mansion.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I really like about the nurturing and the healing therapies. That really kind of spoke to me. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
So we're going to go into the Sabian symbols. The Sabian symbols were channeled in 1925 by spiritualist medium Elzie Wheeler and with the assistance of astrologer Mark Edmund Jones. Basically, there's one archetypal symbol for each of the 360 degrees of the astrological chart. So it like gives an archetypal picture, so to speak, of what each degree is. And today we're going to look at the ones for the moon. We have three that we're going to look at. Basically, before, during, and after, or before the now and then the after. So go ahead, Justin. You can start with the first one if you like, please.
Sure. So the if we look at what's coming into this degree here, the past of what's coming into this moon, the Leo 4 degrees is a formally dressed elderly man, stands near trophies he brought back from a hunting expedition. That's the archetypal image. The description of that, or how we can read into the image of that, is about achieving success in a society, and sort of the key word of wanting to prove oneself.
Well, thank you. And then Leo 5, the now, a rock formation towers over a deep canyon. The keynote is the structuring power of elemental forces during the long cycle of planetary evolution. Impersonality.
And then where we're going towards, because this is the degree it's going towards to, is Leo 6 degrees. And the archetypal image here is a conservative, old fashioned lady is confronted by a hippie girl. And so the keynote here is, or the underlying concept of this image here, is the need to transcend our subservient or need to give into the fashion or morals of and culture of today. And so the key word here, or the concept, is we're learning through this moon about what is important, or relativity of social values to ourselves here. So that's sort of the theme of these three symbols. What do you think, Liz?
Well, I like that. Using the Sabian symbols adds a lot. So proving oneself, that's kind of an interesting concept because since these were channeled in 1925, my opinion of proving oneself is proving myself to myself instead of society. And that could just be because I don't totally conform to all of society's original plans or rules, I guess. Maybe that's why that works. And then the rock formation towers, it kind of is stand true to yourself in your power. I think I would, kind of add that to it. And then social values. Well, social values change pretty rapidly. So again, staying, true to yourself and stand in your own power. It's like, I don't need the latest fashion. If that's your thing, that's totally okay. But it seems to come back around the fashion. So that's always interesting.
Right. Well, that I agree with you what you got there, and I love your take on these. I think when I look at these three together, it almost sounds very Earth-like. We've got the rock formations, we've got that sort of Capricornian prove oneself there, and then of course we know Taurus rules values in the chart, and as we'll see in the chart today, there's a lot of Earth stuff going on. There's 4 planets and Earth signs right now, so I think these three together kind of are also relate to what I think is that sort of the Leo. Leos are learning about ego, and there's a lot of ego thing here about wanting to prove oneself, and letting go of personality and impersonality, which is a more of a neutral concept. And then of course, um, uh, you know, um, the relativity of certain things that are social, and those values. So it's definitely, I think, a time that this moon is saying that we can accomplish some things possibly, and to stick to, like I love what you said, kind of, kind of stick to what you think is valuable, your own power, right? Like you were saying.
Well, and hippie girl kind of reminds me of, the earth and, growing some herbs or vegetables or, harvest or pick fruits or vegetables. It's like getting back to nature a little bit. So I like your earth, how you compared that to that. So
Yeah.
let's move on. And we have some basic chart details. The full moon is ruled by the sun. So it goes back to the sun, and the sun is in Aquarius. And then Mars is the chart ruler. Because on the ascendant, which if you looked at 9 o'clock, you have the sign Aries rising, and Mars rules Aries. Mars is still out of bounds, but it goes back into bounds on the 26th. So it can still be acting a little bit out of character, so to speak. Another thing to point out is Uranus will station direct 2 days after this full moon. So it's very possible we'll be feeling the energy of that planet going to be stationing. I personally feel a lot of times the planets when they're going to change directions. And then Pholus is at 8 degrees of Capricorn, right at the top of the chart, up here by the midheaven next to Venus. And I did figure out how to put that in for our next charts next month.
Can I just, for our audience, mention a couple of things here about this? So for those who are new to astrology, the reason that the full moon is ruled by the sun, because the sun in the formal chart rules Leo. And then Mars out of bounds, for those who are also new to astrology, Mars out of bounds. This means that, and I love your take, to get your take on this, Liz, but this just means to me that a lot of people may really kind of go over the top, because Mars is about taking action and being that warrior, that Athena, or a masculine Mars warrior or female warrior. And so people are going to, when Mars is out of bounds, probably go out of bounds, right? Over the top, maybe jump, as we say, jump the shark a little bit, maybe with taking action with things, and maybe be a little bit more dominant. Mars and Capricorn. And also, I love your take on Uranus too there. And then, of course, for the audience, Pholus is an asteroid which relates to sudden changes, sudden events and changes. We always like to say it's when when we pop the cork off a champagne bottle, that's kind of the archetype of that pop. And then Capricorn, Pholus and Capricorn, it really relates to sudden changes in structure, or authority, as we see, because Capricorn is authority and structure. But I'm curious about your thoughts about Mars out of bounds, Liz. I love how you always describe out of bounds planets.
Well, Mars is kind of like the 2-year-old that everything's mine, and wants to do it their way. But Mars out of bounds is like maybe an adult acting like a 2-year-old, because that's kind of inappropriate.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that. So let's go to the next one. And so we start with the Grand Earth Trine. And Uranus here in the second house is in Taurus. And then it's 120 degrees from Juno in Virgo, and 120 degrees from Mercury and Mars in Capricorn. So what do you think of that energy, Justin?
Well, again, for our audience that, maybe new to astrology, trines or triangulation is really means an easy flow of energy, an easy flow of energy between three points in the chart, or three planets. And of course, we know Uranus represents change, rebellion, revolution, and change, or sudden change. And Mars and Mercury, Mars action and Mercury communications. And then for those that are in astrology don't know, Juno was the wife of Jupiter in Greek mythology. So this asteroid relates to, it's one of the goddess asteroids, and relates to marriage or relationships. So I think that this is a time when a lot can happen within our relationships, and we're seeing some things, going on in society, as where this is a big political year. So right now, this is a crazy time. There's this easy flow of earth energy and our relationships to communicating, and so we're going to see a lot of, again, that Mars is out of bounds, so that means, and it's right there next to Mercury, so this means a lot of, really a lot of crazy talk and a lot of crazy communications and dominant, and so a lot of dynamics and relationships, I would say. That's what I would say, a lot of dynamics and relationships.
Well, and how we communicate in those relationships, and there could possibly be some change, and it might not, we might not like the change at first, but then lots of times change happens and we're like, oh wow, when we can see 2020 of what that change was, it's like, oh, I like that change.
Right.
um, the only
You know,
caution would be that the words might flow too easily and you might say something that you wish you hadn't said, so just take caution of the words that you are communicating, because it's hard to take back things.
yeah, absolutely. I like how you brought the communications part into it. And I might also say this would be like a great time to start a creative project, or announcing a creative project, or putting out a newsletter, or sending emails. So there's this really strong earth, moving mountain type of energy right now with this, I would say.
Well, in the communication that you do receive, it's like I would double check it just to make it sure it's accurate. And here again, we have an earth trine, so here we're adding the earth energy in that we've already mentioned previously.
Right.
So now we have a minor grand trine, and in this chart there's actually two minor grand trines, so there's lots of flowing, working together, cooperation energy. And we start with Jupiter in Taurus, and it's sextile, so it's 60 degrees away from Saturn in Pisces, and that's sextile to Venus and Pholus in Capricorn. And then Venus is 120 degrees away from Jupiter, which forms um, a trine. So we have a minor grand trine here in the works.
So what do you think?
Well, so far it's like we have this supportive energy to assist us at this time. So it's like, to me, the planets are communicating on a pretty good scale, but sometimes, I said before with the slide before, is, to caution of the words that do come through, that it's, truth and just, and the facts, not just what you made up or what you want it to be. So with Jupiter, that's expansion. Saturn is the rules or the container. Venus and Pholus, it's like what we desire. So it's like kind of supporting of, like, it's looks like a pretty good window to be working on a project that maybe you've wanted to work on, or you started in the past, and now it's like take it to the next step.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned projects. I think if we were looking at over the last couple of years, when would be the most opportune time to uh, get something going structurally, or to build something, now would be one of those times, because you've got that Mercury Mars conjunction. So our thinking is right in alignment with taking action with some type of structure or building. And then, of course, we've got that Jupiter almost conjunct Uranus. So there's this. I agree. It's a really strong energy. What I like, interestingly, too, though, is this. And for the audience as well, sextiles is really a creative flow. It's similar to a trine, but it's very creative, very supportive energy. And I think that Jupiter sextiling Saturn in Pisces, there's there can be a little bit of what we say a regulator here. There's a little bit of conservatism maybe with in taking these projects. So there's a balance here with taking some action, I think, with Saturn getting involved, and maybe bringing things down a little bit down to earth, because Pisces is not very down to earth sometimes. So that Jupiter and Saturn can kind of balance each other out, and so it may bring some balance there, I think.
And Jupiter and Saturn are in mutual reception, so they're basically wearing each other's clothes or in each other's area. Um,
Right.
and with the Saturn, it's like it could bring the discipline to work on the project or write the book, whatever project you want to work. And Jupiter could bring, you know, you might find the diamonds in the rough, so to speak. You know,
Right.
it's like polish something off or find something that maybe you weren't anticipating being able to add or find.
Right. Right. And so it's moving mountains. That's really kind of all this earth energy is about, moving mountains right now in our personal lives, definitely.
And so we have another minor grand trine. And this one, we have Pluto, which is sextile to Neptune in Pisces. And then Pluto is sextile to Pallas. And then Pallas is trine to Neptune. So we have this configuration that they all connect with each other. So, what do you
So,
want to share about that?
no, I was going to go with you first. What do you think? I'm curious what you think about this.
Well, it's like Pluto to me is always digging deep within in the underground. It's like, do I have secrets? Do I have things that I've been trying to bury? Is it time to purge them? Um, I think so. And then with Neptune there, it's like visions and dreams. It's like, purge perhaps what you're not using or need at this time to make space for the dreams and desires that you want to bring in. And, Pallas and Scorpio, it's like, we've got quite a mix here. So Pallas to me is working with Mars and having that energy to do those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. You're talking about, digging deep. And for the audience who may not know that, Pallas is another asteroid which relates to where we see patterns at. And when it's in Scorpio, the sign of death, sex, and transformation, there's a psychological thing that can happen here about going through and healing. And I'm going to start bringing in the Nakshatra here again. So there's a healing aspect here. Um, and I would say this is a great time if you want to go to see a therapist, or to, and Pluto in Aquarius, the fact that it's in the sign that rules our communications in the collective, and Neptune is the collective planet about what's kind of going on in our unconscious collective. I could also see where there could be, there's a communication thing going on here, but also a psychological and a kind of a depth psychology thing going on here. So yeah, definitely a great time to lean into counseling, to self healing, nourishing oneself, bringing the Nakshatra back into here. And how that nourishment and the Nakshatra were played out with that earth energy is where people are going to want to be even much more um, um, dominant right now in wanting to take care of others, wanting to self heal, which is great. So this is a good time for diving down into your subconscious and doing some mental self care. You know.
It makes me think of, like, to do some tapping or some Ho'oponopono, which is very easy to find on the internet these days, and do those, to work on releasing maybe in a healthier manner. So that might be helpful to some of the people out there.
And then going back to those Sabian symbols, which was talking about ego, about impersonality, and kind of working through one's, either relatively social values, letting go of some nihilism, and we're kind of going back to what's important. Yeah.
Okay, and then we kind of shift gears into a mutable grand cross. And a mutable grand cross. A grand cross is made up of 4 90 degrees angles to make a square. And in this one, we have Neptune um, in Pisces, and then square and opposite to 3 of the asteroid goddesses, Vesta, Pallas, and Ceres. So that's a really interesting combination there. And it's all in mutable signs. So that's to me like finishing up things, the mutable, to move on to the next stage or to begin something new. So it's kind of like in numerology, the number 9 of finishing a cycle. Um, So, what would you like to share, Justin?
Well, I wanted to ask you something first because I don't know if the audience knows, but you're really good at describing sometimes aspects. So, what was your description of a square? Because before we get into this a little bit, what was your description of
Oh,
square?
well, there's some friction and it's asking for change and adjustment. So, lots of change and lots of adjustments. And they could be minor or they can be big. It just depends. And since the asteroid goddesses are involved, I would say um, potentially there's some new something new coming around women's issues, whether it's birth control or how women are treated, or could be any number of things. And Neptune, it's like, okay, we could be in the fog, but we could have a new dream coming to the surface of what that might look like.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, especially on the women's issues. Definitely. You know what I like about this, and the one um, planet, Neptune, again represents the collective. Is kind of got the other these three goddesses. So the divine feminine and the collective is there's tension and change happening with that right now. And for those in the audience, so Juno, again, as we were saying before, represents relationships, and it's part of that grand cross. And then Ceres is how we nurture ourselves. I look at, and Vesta kind of is how we are nurtured in the group. So there's definitely with these, as you pointed out, mutable signs, that there is, Virgo is about the health and healing of something here. Vesta is how we're communicating, and because it's in Gemini. And then Ceres is about, especially in the ninth house there, our beliefs. So definitely the whole divine feminine right now is going through this really tension in the collective here right now, with Roe versus Wade going away, and abortion is going to be a main issue, that a big issue this year. Definitely the divine feminine is going through a very tension action oriented time, and related to our beliefs, communications, and our relationships. So I definitely think that there's going to be revisiting, you know, um, what we really want with this. And again, I go back to the whole thing with the lunar mansion and the moving the mountains. That lunar mansion is pushes about the cow's udder, the nourishment. That's the divine feminine nourishing others. And then of course with all the Taurus and Capricorn energy in the chart, and the Virgo, there's this thing about this earth energy and moving mountains. So definitely divine feminine and women's issues are going to be very important over this coming year with this here. And it really kind of speaks to a bigger picture, I think, going on to what you were saying. So
Well, and then I have another thought. Neptune rules the ocean, so we could just say water. And then Juno is relationship, so our relationship to the ocean and water. Vesta is our hearth and home, so how we use water in our homes. And then Ceres is how we harvest it, so how we collect water and use it for drinking and bathing, etc. There could be some change around all that. I read the other day that someone had put on there, well, since I'm on a well, I don't mind leaving my faucet to drip because it feels like it'll just replenish itself. And we had freezing weather, so I get why they want to drip their faucets. But they said, but if you had it come through the pipes into your house, that was a different story. And I just thought, wow, that's really interesting, because no matter where it comes from, it's still a resource. So
yeah. Well, and I also might find it interesting. There was an article that came out yesterday that they just, and it was actually in the news again today, that they've just discovered more water on Mars, talking about oceans, and that enough to cover the whole planet in an ocean. So, talking about oceans and water here. And, I think also if we look at what's going on in society, there's that big thing with what's happening over the Middle East right now with oceans, with routes where a lot of the ships now can't go through the Suez Canal. They're having to go around the tip of Africa. So a lot's going on on the ocean. with humanity right now.
Yeah, that fits in. So we'll go on to the next one. So here we have some squares and oppositions to make a fixed T square. And this one involves the sun and moon, the full moon. And the moon's in Leo and the sun is in Aquarius, squaring off to Jupiter in Taurus. Do you want to share first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I always look at oppositions as kind of like two people on a teeter totter. It's like that tension. It's like one person going this way, another person going this way. So it really doesn't, it balances each other out. I always like to say oppositions is a balancing effect. But the fact that, again, what we were saying before with that Jupiter sextiling Saturn, I think this, again, just for me, this just kind of overlays that um, balance and adjustment that yeah, maybe we want to go, maybe we want to use all the bulldozers to move that mountain right now, but in reality it's going to be one bulldozer and it's going to go a little bit slower. There's a little bit of a moderation here, or balance. That's what I see. What do you see?
Well, I find it interesting it's in fixed, and fixed doesn't like to move, but the full moon, I love the teeter totter one, but I call it the dance of life of how are we going to balance this? And it's like, I want that space. No, I want that space. And then Jupiter is squaring off to that in Taurus, and Jupiter could be making things a little bit bigger than what is really the issue,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps. But
Yeah.
maybe it needs to be made big so that we do something about it.
Right. And and just for the audience effect, the archetype of Jupiter is, Liz, is really about growth and expansion. It's the biggest, for people who don't know or are new to astrology, it's the biggest planet in the solar system. So it helps us grow and expand. So there is this strong need to, and when it's in Taurus, it's about growth of values, back to the values, that we saw there in the Sabian symbols, and it's about growth of resources, because it's in an earth sign, values and resources. Great time to ask for. So if a person's wanting to ask for a raise, it may go a little bit slower with the full moon here, a little bit, but definitely time with Jupiter. I think in Taurus that people are more apt to see possibly income increases or new jobs or an increase in resources, which is positive.
Well, and I would look at how you're spending your resources, my money, how am I spending that? Well, gee, does that really, do I still need that subscription to something that, gee, I haven't watched that for 6 months or use that in 6 months? Why am I paying $25 for this a month when I don't even use it? So,
Right.
review what your finances a little bit.
Exactly. Yep. Agree with you totally.
And then we have a cardinal T square. So we're hitting all the mutable, cardinal, and fixed signs are modalities. So it's like pretty interesting that we have all this energy. This chart's very powerful, I think.
Hmm.
So we have the south node and the north node involved in this one. So with the north node, we have Chiron and Aries conjunct that opposite the south node. And then Mercury and Mars are involved in this one also, and they're in Capricorn. Um, so of the nodes of the moon are an energy. The south node is like what we've learned when we were younger or the past, and the north node is where we're headed. And then with Chiron there, um, a centaur is like our healing and how we teach. It could be our wounds, and then communication and our energy with Mercury and Mars. So, what would you like to share, Justin?
No, I love your description there. The only thing I would add is so for those new to astrology, the nodes relate to the moon's elliptical path around the Earth and where it crosses the sun's elliptical path. It's how we get eclipses. And I liked your description of the nodes. So there are actually mathematical points in the sky for our audience that doesn't know astrology. And so, as you pointed out, the south node is kind of what we come into this life with. It's kind of the birth, and that north node is what what we're moving towards. And as we see this as a larger a year and a half cycle or whatever, so it's in that sign of self and relationships. That's sort of the theme right now within the collective. And with this, I think I'm going to go back to what you were talking earlier about those communications, because here we got self and relationship, and then it's T squaring Mercury and Mars there, about action and communications and our thinking. So this may be a time when we say, well, do I do it myself or do I do it with somebody else? And we have to, like you said before, really be aware of our communications right now. They're going to be pretty dynamic. And yeah, so that's what I would add.
Okay.
While agreeing with you there.
Okay, so like between the squares and T-squares and grand crosses and trines and sextiles, and it's a very mixed energy of this chart. So it's like there's some things that are very energetically supportive and cooperating, but they're asking for adjustments and changes at the same time. So to me, that's working cooperatively, and it's like they assist each other. So I really like that energy, because I know for myself, I've been working on some projects that I've been kind of, dragging my feet on and like pushing forward. And it's like I run into a roadblock, but then it's like, oh, I found a solution, and then I can move on to the next thing, and ticking those things off of my to-do list, so to speak.
Yeah, I would agree. I have to agree with everything you said, and I think, this is a great time to get stuff going. Move those mountains, but it may go it's not going to be all with all those squares. It's definitely some moderation in how we're moving forward, but it's definitely time to get something going and nourish it and get it, birth it. That's the Cancer and Leo, and being a great time to start a creative project, which you and I've got something going soon. So this is part of this. The full moon thing is one of the things that we're starting that's creative. So yeah, I would
Yeah,
agree.
that's very exciting. And I also, I'll put it back here. So here's our websites again for those of you that would like to get a hold of either Justin or myself. There's our websites for you to do that easily. And oh, I know what I didn't mention, or what I remembered, is that all the planets are moving direct as of the 27th of this month. So it's like that forward movement, because Uranus will move direct on the 27th. So it's like, full steam ahead, cars in go gear. It's like, let's move.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we will be back next month again for another full moon forecast. So we look forward to having you. Please like and make comments if you like. Anything else you'd like to share, Justin?
Yeah, like and subscribe. You can subscribe, and if you have any questions about full moons, where would they what would they email, Les, if somebody viewer had a question about a full moon?
They can find our emails on our websites.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So
Yeah.
Thank you. It was great, and we'll see you
All
next
right.
month.
See you next month, Liz.
Bye.
Bye.